During my son's wedding, the bride leaned toward me with a smile that could cut glass and whispered, "Get out of here and don't come back. You're not welcome." Her voice was sweet enough for the crowd to miss it, but sharp enough to slice through my chest. I smiled back. "All right," I said softly, "but I'm not leaving alone." And that's when her perfect little smile started to crack, because she had no idea who was about to walk in behind me. But let's rewind a bit to the day it all started. March afternoons in Portland were supposed to be peaceful. After 40 years of work as an architect, I had finally retired, traded deadlines for daffodils, boardrooms for garden beds. That day I was sketching drainage layouts for the southeast corner of my property when the doorbell rang. Once, then again, sharp, impatient. When I opened the door, my son Rufus stood there, grinning like a man who'd just won the lottery. Beside him was a woman I'd never seen before, tall, perfectly dressed, her hand resting on his arm with the ownership of someone who already believed she belonged. "Dad," Rufus blurted before I could even say hello, "we're engaged. I wanted you to meet Celeste right away." Right away. No call, no heads up, just this surprise drop at my doorstep. "Come in," I said quietly, stepping aside. The woman's perfume arrived before she did, something expensive, deliberate. "Celeste Morgan," she said, extending a hand. "I've heard so much about you, Mr. Truce." "Just Truce," I corrected. She gave me a smile like a realtor about to close a deal. Her handshake was firm, her nails polished in the kind of French tips that whispered money. Her eyes moved fast, across the original crown molding, the walnut banister, the hand-carved shelves. Not admiring, assessing. "This craftsmanship is stunning," she said smoothly. "They don't build homes like this anymore." "I built this one myself," I replied. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, then calculation. We moved to the living room. I made coffee, and as I poured I heard her voice drifting from the couch. Square footage, property lines, development zones. Not love talk, investment talk. When I came back, I asked, "So how'd you two meet?" Rufus beamed. "Networking event." She was consulting for a luxury real estate firm. I was presenting on sustainable design. She loved my ideas. Celeste nodded, all professional poise. "I work with high net worth clients," she said. "Property portfolios, estate transitions, that sort of thing." Rufus impressed me with his ethics. She said high net worth 3 times in 5 minutes. I smiled politely. But something in my gut, the same instinct that told me when a foundation line was off by an inch, started to hum. Then Rufus reached into his bag. "Actually, Celeste had a great idea, Dad. Something responsible." She suggested a prenuptial agreement for transparency. He handed me the papers like it was a gift. The document was thick, 20 pages of legal glue. I put on my reading glasses and flipped through. Celeste leaned back with a confident smile. "It's all standard," she said. "Just fairness and protection." I looked up at her. Protection from what? Her smile didn't waver. From surprises. For a moment, the only sound was the ticking clock on the mantel. And in that silence, I realized she wasn't here for love. She was here for leverage. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet. That kind of quiet that amplifies every creak, every breath of the old floorboards. Celeste's words echoed in my head. Protection from surprises. Protection from me. I'd built every inch of this house with my own hands. And yet suddenly, sitting there in the dark, I felt like a guest inside it. I poured myself a glass of water, then walked into my study, the only room in this house that still smelled like my late wife, Lydia, lavender, and old paper. I opened the drawer of my old drafting desk and pulled out a file I hadn't touched in years, labeled in my wife's neat handwriting. Truce, personal and estate, confidential. Inside were old deeds, titles, bank papers, and one small yellowed envelope I didn't remember ever seeing. The seal was unbroken. Inside was a single page, Lydia's handwriting again. "If Rufus ever brings home someone who reminds you of Margaret Morgan, stop everything and check the records." I froze. Morgan. Celeste Morgan. My pulse kicked hard. Lydia was gone for 8 years. How could she have known that name? I pulled my old laptop closer and started digging through archived client files. Back when I was a young architect, when Portland was still building itself from the ground up. And there it was, Margaret Morgan and Associates, a real estate firm from the 1980s. One of their biggest scandals, illegal property transfers, a scheme that robbed elderly homeowners by manipulating legal trusts and title deeds. Margaret Morgan had been investigated, disbarred, disappeared. The last record of her showed a daughter, Celeste. The next morning I invited Rufus over, alone. He arrived still glowing from love, clutching coffee and oblivion. "Dad, you've got to give her a chance," he said before I could speak. "She's just careful about finances." "Careful?" I asked, sliding Lydia's letter across the table. He frowned. "What's this?" "Your mother wrote it years ago," I said. "And she mentioned a Morgan." He laughed awkwardly, shaking his head. "Dad, you're overthinking this." "You always do that. Build stories out of structure." "Maybe," I said quietly. "But structures tell the truth, Rufus, even when people don't." He sighed and stood up. "Look, Celeste loves me. We're getting married whether you approve or not." And then, as he left, his voice cracked a little. "You'll come to the wedding, right?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Of course." He smiled, relieved, not realizing that by the time the wedding came, I'd already started making calls. I found the old law firm that handled my estate decades ago, same one Lydia used for the house deed. An older man named Harlan still worked there. He remembered my wife well. When I mentioned Celeste Morgan's name, his tone changed. "Truce, that name again? You'd better come see me. I think your late wife left something for you, sealed, to be opened only if that surname ever reappeared." My hands went cold. "You're sure?" "Positive," he said. "It's in our records vault." Her exact words were, "If Morgan ever returns, give this to Truce before she signs anything." I drove to the office the next morning. The folder he handed me was small, wrapped in ribbon, dated 15 years ago. Inside were legal documents, handwritten notes, and an amendment to my will, one I'd never seen. At the bottom of the first page were the words, "In case of attempted property fraud or coercion toward my son Rufus, control of estate passes automatically to secondary heir, as defined in Clause 7. I flipped to Clause 7, and that's when my breath stopped. Because the secondary heir wasn't Rufus. It wasn't Celeste. It wasn't even family. It was a name I hadn't spoken in 20 years. Someone Celeste didn't even know existed. Someone who would ruin every plan she had. The morning of the wedding arrived gray and heavy, as if the clouds themselves had heard the rumors. I stood in front of the mirror, tying the same navy blue tie I'd worn the day I married Lydia. Back then, I had no idea that love could be both a gift and a weapon. I looked at my reflection and whispered, "Let's finish what you started, Lydia." The church was beautiful. Oak beams, gold light filtering through stained glass, piano playing softly in the distance. Guests filled the pews, all smiles and perfume. And there, near the altar, stood Rufus, nervous, proud, adjusting his cufflinks. Celeste walked in moments later, a vision of calm calculation. Every step she took down that aisle sounded rehearsed, like choreography she'd practiced in a mirror. Her gown shimmered, her smile perfect, but her eyes, cold, always measuring. When she reached Rufus, she squeezed his hands and threw a quick glance my way. Our eyes met. She smiled sweetly, the kind of smile people give before pulling the trigger. "Glad you could make it." "Mr. Truce," she whispered as the officiant prepared his notes. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied. She didn't know it yet, but this wasn't just a wedding. It was Revelation Day. The ceremony began. Vows were read. Cameras clicked. When it came time for the signatures, the officiant asked for witnesses. Celeste turned toward me, as if to rub it in that I'd been replaced in my own son's life. But before I could stand, the back doors of the church opened. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Everyone turned. A woman stepped in, dressed in deep green, her presence sharp as the wind. Her hair streaked silver, her face calm, but her eyes burned with something fierce and unfinished. Celeste froze. Her bouquet trembled slightly. Rufus blinked in confusion. "Who is that?" Celeste's voice dropped, barely a whisper. "That can't be. She's gone." I stepped forward, my voice steady. "No, Celeste. She's not gone. You just hoped she was." The guests murmured, confused, phones half raised. The woman stopped beside me at the aisle. I turned to her and nodded. "Everyone," I said, my voice echoing through the church. "This is Margaret Morgan, Celeste's mother." You could have heard a pin drop. Celeste's perfect mask cracked. Her painted smile vanished like smoke. You had no right," she hissed. "No right?" Margaret cut her off, her voice low but lethal. "You used my name, my lies, my firm's ruins, and to trap another man's son. You thought burying me would bury my past, but here I am watching you repeat it." Rufus looked from Celeste to me, utterly lost. Mom? He whispered, disbelief thick in his voice. Celeste stepped back, shaking her head, her voice trembling for the first time. You don't understand. She abandoned me! She's... Enough, Margaret said, tears brimming now. You're doing to this family what I did to mine. But this man, she gestured to me, was smart enough to see through it. Every guest's eyes were on Celeste now, her mask peeling off in real time. She turned toward Rufus, desperate. I love you, I swear I do. But Rufus stepped back. You love ownership, Celeste. You always did. Silence fell. Only the faint hum of the church organ remained, trembling under the weight of truth. Then calmly, I said the words that closed the chapter. You told me to get out, Celeste. But I didn't leave alone. I brought the one ghost you couldn't bury. Margaret stepped forward, opening her purse and pulling out a small flash drive. This, she said, is everything your daughter's been hiding. The property transfers, the bank trail, the real reason she wanted to marry into your family. Rufus's face went pale. Celeste's lips parted, but no sound came out. The officiant, lost and nervous, cleared his throat. Should we continue? No one answered. Celeste turned on her heel, tears cutting through her makeup, and walked straight out of the church. No music, no applause, just whispers and disbelief trailing behind her. Rufus sat down slowly, face buried in his hands. Margaret placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, and I stood there, looking at the altar, where a contract was supposed to be signed, but instead, a truth was delivered. The guests had already scattered into murmuring clusters by the church gates. Reporters had begun circling like crows sensing scandal. And amid the chaos of wilted flowers and unanswered questions, Celeste had vanished. I stood alone on the steps, the cold wind tugging at my sleeves. That's when I noticed it, a white envelope, lying where Celeste had stood moments before. The ink on it had smudged from tears or rain. It bore only one word, truce. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. Inside, one folded note, neat handwriting, feminine, familiar in a way that made my heart stop for a beat. I unfolded it. If you're reading this, it means the truth found its way to the surface, as it always does. You think Celeste ruined your life? But she was only a mirror reflecting what you never wanted to face. Lydia's death wasn't what you believed. My breath caught. Lydia. For a moment, the world tilted. The church bells, the murmuring crowd, the flashes, and all became distant echoes. I sank onto the stone steps, reading the note again, slower this time. Every word felt heavier, deliberate, like it had been waiting years to reach me. Lydia's death wasn't what you believed. What did that mean? Lydia had died in a car accident, late at night on her way to a client. The police said it was brake failure, but now... My hands began to shake. Margaret walked up quietly beside me. What's that? I hesitated. A letter. From her. Her brows furrowed. From Lydia? I nodded slowly, still staring at the paper. Or someone pretending to be her. Margaret's expression hardened. No, that handwriting, that's Lydia's. I've seen it before. She wrote me once, years ago. That hit like a stone. You knew her? Margaret looked away, the confession heavy in her throat. She worked with my firm for a few months. Smart, quiet, always smiling, but sad. When she found out about Celeste's games, she came to warn me. But by then, everything had already fallen apart. My pulse quickened. So you're saying Lydia and Celeste crossed paths, Margaret finished. And I think Lydia discovered something she wasn't supposed to. The air felt colder now, as though the truth itself carried frost. I opened the envelope again. This time I noticed a second slip of paper tucked inside, faintly yellowed, folded twice. It was a receipt. From Morgan and West Legal, dated 3 days before Lydia's crash. Signed at the bottom. Payment received in full. Client, Celeste Morgan. I looked up at Margaret, eyes wide. Your daughter paid Lydia before she died? For what? Margaret shook her head, horrified. I don't know. But if this is real... I stood abruptly. Then Lydia's death wasn't an accident. The realization sliced through me like glass. All these years, all the guilt, the night spent replaying her last phone call, the loneliness that hollowed me out, and now, this. Rufus approached hesitantly, eyes red. Dad, are you okay? I looked at him, my son, the boy I'd tried to protect but ended up losing to a stranger's lies. I don't know, son, I said quietly. But I think we were both played. He knelt beside me, voice shaking. What do we do now? I clenched the note. We find out why your mother's name still echoes in their secrets. That night I couldn't sleep. The note lay on my desk, next to Lydia's old photograph, the one where she stood barefoot on the porch, sunlight tangled in her hair, holding Rufus as a baby. I whispered into the silence. Lydia, what did you know? The shadows offered no answer, but the faint sound of tires outside pulled me from my thoughts. Headlights swept across my window, the car idling by the curb. Someone watching. I stood by the curtain just enough to see a black sedan, and behind the wheel, Celeste. Her face was pale, mascara streaked, eyes burning with something I couldn't name. She lifted her phone. For a second I thought she'd call. Instead, she dropped an envelope through my mailbox, then sped off into the dark. I went downstairs immediately, heart pounding. Inside the envelope, a flash drive. No note this time, just a drive. I plugged it into my laptop. A single video file appeared labeled, "Before she died, Lydia." The room was silent. The kind of silence that hums in your ears. Only the faint tick of the mantel clock filled the air. I sat there staring at the flash drive plugged into my laptop. Lydia's name glowing faintly on the screen. For years I'd told myself she died peacefully. That her car just failed her. That fate had taken her. But fate doesn't leave letters. People do. I pressed play. The screen flickered, static first, then a shaky frame of Lydia sitting inside her car. Rain pattered against the windshield, city lights blurring behind her. Her face looked tired, not weak, just finished, like someone who'd been holding a truth too long and finally decided to set it down. If anyone finds this, especially you, Truce, she began, voice trembling, then it means I couldn't make it home. My throat tightened. She glanced at the passenger seat, documents, folders, an old phone. I've been followed for days. I know who it is now. It's not an accident what's happening. Celeste Morgan isn't who she says she is. The name hit like a gunshot. Lydia continued, looking directly into the camera. She came to my office pretending to represent a development client. She asked for files, blueprints, valuations, your project records. I didn't understand at first. Then I realized she wanted your assets, Truce. She wanted everything you ever built. I leaned closer, every breath heavier than the last. I traced her back, Lydia said, flipping open a folder, revealing legal forms and bank slips. Her real connection is Margaret West, the woman financing the new tower downtown. Celeste is her daughter. She's using Rufus to get access to your estate through marriage. The camera shook slightly as Lydia's eyes darted toward the rearview mirror. Headlights glowed behind her. They know I've found out. I'm going to the police station now, and if I don't make it... She swallowed hard. Tell Rufus that his mother never stopped loving him. And Truce, her voice cracked. You were right. Some people don't chase love, they chase inheritance. The feed went black for a moment. Then a sharp crash echoed. Metal twisting. Glass breaking. The sound of tires skidding on wet asphalt. Then nothing. Just static. I froze. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the laptop. It felt like I was watching her die again, only this time she was warning me in real time. Margaret stepped closer, tears streaming down her cheeks. My God, she knew. She knew what Celeste was doing. I turned toward her, my voice a whisper edged in rage. You said you didn't know. She flinched. I didn't. I swear, Truce, I didn't know what she planned. Celeste and I have been estranged for years. When she came back into my life, she said she wanted to start over, that she found someone who reminded her of her father. I had no idea it was you. The walls seemed to close in. My son's wedding, Lydia's death, the forged charm, every piece now clicked into place, and the image they formed was poison. Rufus appeared in the doorway, pale, eyes wide. Dad, what's going on? I turned the laptop toward him. Your mother. She left this. He watched the video in silence. When it ended, his face was white as chalk. I married her, he whispered. I married the woman who helped kill Mom. Tears blurred my vision. She used you, son. She wanted access, not love. Rufus stood abruptly, fury breaking through the shock. Where is she? I glanced at the window. She was outside earlier, watching. He grabbed his jacket, but I caught his arm. No, you're not going after her alone. The strength in his gaze reminded me of Lydia. I'm not scared of her anymore, Dad, he said. She's taken enough from us. We drove through the rain that night, following the only clue we had, the receipt from Morgan and West Legal. The office was closed, lights dim, but one car was still parked in the rear lot. A silver Mercedes. Celeste's. We stepped out quietly, the rain washing our footsteps away. Inside, the glow of monitors lit the glass walls of her office. And there she was, Celeste Morgan, sitting alone, hands folded, as if she'd been waiting. When she saw us through the glass, she didn't flinch. She stood slowly, walked to the door, and opened it with calm precision. "Truce, Rufus. You found the video, didn't you?" Her tone wasn't angry, it was almost relieved. Rufus's voice cracked. "You lied. You used me." Celeste sighed, eyes heavy. "No, Rufus, I fell in love with you despite everything." "But your father—" She looked at me. "He built his empire on land that wasn't his to begin with. My father lost everything because of him." "What are you talking about?" I demanded. She stepped closer. 25 years ago, you bought the Pine Ridge property from my father's company for a fraction of its worth. He killed himself months later. You called it business. I called it theft. I swore I'd take back what you took from us." Her hands trembled. "But then I met Rufus, and for a while, revenge didn't feel worth it." The room spun. Lydia's words echoed in my head. "Some people don't chase love. They chase inheritance." But maybe Lydia had been wrong about one thing. Maybe Celeste's love had turned real, just far too late. Rufus took a step forward. "So what now? You ruin us both? That's your ending?" Celeste looked down, then reached into her purse. For a terrifying second, I thought she was reaching for a weapon. Instead, she pulled out another envelope, sealed, heavy, embossed with legal markings. "I already filed the reversal of all property claims," she said softly. "Everything you thought I wanted, I've given back. I just wanted you both to know the truth before I left." Rufus's voice broke. "Leave? Where?" Her eyes glistened. "Somewhere quiet, where neither of our families can hurt each other anymore." Then she walked past us, into the rain, into the dark, and didn't look back. Rufus stood there frozen, the envelope clutched in his hand, tears and rain mixing down his face. I put a hand on his shoulder. "Let her go," I whispered. "Some ghosts aren't meant to be chased. They just teach us how we became them." He nodded slowly, the pain deep but clean, like truth cutting through lies. Outside, the storm finally began to quiet. The rain had stopped by morning, leaving the city wrapped in that pale, silver quiet that comes after a storm, the kind of quiet that feels temporary, like the world is only catching its breath before breaking again. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the flash drive beside an untouched cup of coffee. The night replayed in my head. Lydia's face, Celeste's confession, Rufus's tears. Every truth felt like a blade turned slow. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Mr. Truce Boyd?" a man's voice said. "Yes?" "This is Detective Harlan, Portland Harbor Unit. We found something you need to see. It's about Ms. Celeste Morgan." I froze. "Is she—" He hesitated. "We don't know yet, but we found her car. You might want to come down here." The harbor smelled of salt and diesel, seagulls cutting through the morning haze. Police tape fluttered against the wind, wrapping a silver Mercedes parked near Dock 12. Rufus was already there, hands buried in his pockets, eyes red from no sleep. Detective Harlan, gray coat, sharp eyes, walked up. "Found it about 2 hours ago. No sign of her. Keys still in the ignition. No signs of struggle." He opened the driver's side door. The seat was dry. She hadn't sat there long. "Looks like she stopped here," the detective said. "Maybe to think." I stepped closer, my pulse steady but heavy. "She was running from something." Harlan nodded toward the open trunk. "We found a suitcase. You'll want to see it yourself." Inside was a single black leather case, neatly packed, no clothes, no wallet, no passport. Just an envelope, and a small jewelry box. Rufus knelt, opening the box slowly. Inside, glinting softly against the velvet, was Lydia's wedding ring. He looked up at me, confusion and grief twisting his face. "Dad, this is Mom's." I swallowed hard. "It can't be. She was wearing it when—" But the detective interrupted quietly. "We ran the serial engraving through the personal items database. The initials match Lydia Boyd." My knees weakened. "How did Celeste get this?" Rufus's voice broke. "She must have taken it after the crash. Maybe she was there." The detective looked between us. "Crash reports say Lydia's vehicle was the only one involved. But if Celeste's name was connected to her through any transaction, we'll find it." He held up the envelope next, sealed in plastic. "Found this on the passenger seat. It's addressed to you. My name, written in the same steady handwriting as the first letter. But the ink was fresh. I tore it open. Truce. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not running, returning. Lydia didn't die because of greed. She died because she tried to save me. I was there that night. She found out what I'd done and came to warn me, to stop me from signing the deal my mother forced through. She begged me to end it, said revenge would only bury more people. When she left, I followed her. I didn't mean for the accident to happen. I've carried that night for years. I thought marrying Rufus would heal something. But all it did was remind me how much I destroyed. I found her ring in the wreck. I kept it, not as a trophy, but as punishment. I'm giving it back now, along with everything else I stole. Tell Rufus I loved him. In the wrong way, at the wrong time. Celeste. The paper slipped from my hands. Rufus caught it, reading through tears that fell faster than he could wipe them. She didn't just use me, he whispered. She was broken. I nodded slowly, voice low, and Lydia tried to save her. We both stared out over the gray water, waves curling against the dock, seagulls diving through mist. Detective, I said finally, if she's still out there. He nodded. We'll issue a missing persons alert. But I'll be honest, when someone leaves a note like that, they usually don't plan on coming back. That night I couldn't stop thinking about the harbor, about how Celeste's last words sounded less like an ending and more like a confession, carved in regret. I found Lydia's ring still sitting on the table, catching the glow of the lamp. The gold was cold, the diamond dulled by years of dust and silence. I turned it in my hand, then placed it beside the letter, whispering, She forgave you, Celeste. Maybe not in words, but she forgave you. Outside, the rain started again, soft, like an echo of Lydia's last night. Rufus walked in quietly. Dad? Yeah. He sat down opposite me. I don't know how to move on from this. You don't, I said gently. You just learn to live with what truth leaves behind. He nodded, eyes glistening. What do we do now? I looked at the flash drive, the letter, the ring, the last pieces of two women bound by tragedy and love. We rebuild, I said, but this time with honesty. No blueprints, no contracts, just truth. 7 days passed. The storm had lifted. But Portland still carried the damp stillness of a city that had seen too much grief. Rufus barely spoke. I didn't push him. Some wounds need silence more than comfort. Each morning I walked past Lydia's portrait in the hall. Her smile still caught mid-sunlight. And each time, I thought of Celeste's final words. Lydia didn't die because of greed. She died because she tried to save me. That sentence lived in my head like thunder that never faded. On the 8th morning, my phone rang again. Detective Harlan's voice. Calm, steady, but heavier this time. Mr. Boyd, we found her. My breath stopped. Celeste? Yes. Her car was pulled from the harbor early this morning. There's something you'll want to see in person. The docks were quieter than before. The kind of quiet that only follows closure. Or something pretending to be it. Rufus walked beside me, his face pale but determined. A tow truck idled near Dock 9, its crane lowering the dripping frame of Celeste's silver Mercedes onto the gravel. The windows were shattered, salt-stained. Inside, the front seat was empty. No body, no trace of her. She's not here, Rufus whispered. Harlan nodded. Tide's strong. Could have pulled her anywhere along the coast. But that's not why I called you. He opened the glove compartment. Inside was a small waterproof envelope, sealed in clear plastic. On it, written in the same elegant script as before, for the son she couldn't save. Rufus froze. Is that? I nodded slowly. It's for you. He reached for it with shaking hands. The seal broke easily, revealing a single folded letter and a small photo. The photo came first. Rufus, barely 5 years old, sitting in Lydia's lap on the front porch. Celeste was in the background, smiling faintly, not as a bride or a stranger, but as a girl half her age, standing beside Lydia, both of them holding building sketches. Rufus frowned. Wait, she knew Mom? I felt my stomach drop. The letter explained everything. Rufus, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. But before I disappear, you need to know the truth I've hidden the longest. I didn't meet your mother through business. I met her when I was 14. She mentored me, taught me about design, about structure, about dreaming beyond what the world tells you to settle for. When my father's company fell apart, Lydia tried to help us. She fought for him, but the board forced your father to buy our land. She begged him to give us more time. The night before her accident, She told me she'd found a way to undo the deal legally. She said she'd protect us both. I followed her, scared and angry, wanting to stop her from facing the men behind it. I never meant to cause what happened. You deserve to know, Lydia wasn't just your mother. She was my savior. And you, Rufus? You reminded me of everything I lost when she died. I didn't come into your life for revenge. I came because I couldn't stop loving the family I destroyed. I wish I'd had the courage to tell you sooner. Celeste. The paper slipped from Rufus's hands. He stood there in stunned silence, staring out toward the gray horizon. So she knew Mom. Before all of this? Yes, I said quietly. She was part of Lydia's past, long before she became our storm. The detective looked away, giving us space. Rufus wiped his eyes. She wasn't lying when she said she loved me, was she? I shook my head. No, she just didn't know what love was until it was too late. He looked down at the ring. Lydia's ring, still shining faintly in the morning light. Maybe forgiveness isn't about them deserving it, he murmured. Maybe it's about us needing peace. I nodded. Your mother would have said that. We stood there for a long time, father and son, watching the tide reclaim the shore. Somewhere beneath that vast gray water rested two women, one who had built our family and one who had broken it, only to try and mend it with her final breath. As we turned to leave, I slipped the ring into Rufus's hand. Keep it, I said. It belonged to her. But maybe it's time it belonged to you now, as a reminder. He looked at it, then back at me. Of what? That even the most perfect designs still crack, but they can still hold. That night I sat at my drafting desk again for the first time in years. Not to sketch buildings, but to sketch memory. Lydia's face. Rufus as a child. Even Celeste, standing in the rain. Lines turned into ghosts. Ghosts turned into forgiveness. I wrote one final note and placed it beside Lydia's photograph. You were right. The strongest foundations aren't built from stone. They're built from second chances. The next morning, Rufus left for Seattle. A new start. A new project, a new version of himself. He hugged me before leaving. We're okay now, Dad, he said softly. We made it through. I watched him go, the sky finally clearing after weeks of gray. And for the first time in years, I felt peace. As I locked the front door and turned toward the light creeping through the windows, I whispered to no one and everyone at once. Rest now, Lydia. She came to take everything, but she gave us back the truth.